Hello.
That's it, yeah. Just got to do a quick little change on this end. There it is. Dope. What is up, everybody? MuseMe TV. We are back. Jesus, it's been so long. What's up, man?
What's up? How are you?
Patrick in the house. We got Patrick in the house.
How you doing?
Pretty good. You know what's so crazy? It's like, okay, so I've been doing podcasting for quite a while now, and I'm just like, you know what? I just need to invite a random person into my house. I don't even know the guy. I'm just going to invite a random person. But we technically kind of know each other because we have mutual friends. And I've been on your Facebook, too, and I've seen that we have some mutual friends as well. Like, have you gone to, like, Comic-Cons and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah.
There you go. I'm a very frequent con go-getter as well. So we've had to have crossed paths before. We've had to have.
I feel like you kind of look familiar from somewhere.
So we've had to have seen each other, especially anime cons. I was a big anime con.
I haven't gone to any anime cons or any sci-fi cons, actually.
But you've been to Albuquerque.
I've been to Albuquerque Comic Con, the first one, Ace, in 2011.
Dope.
That was the first one I went to. And then I haven't been to every single one, never really get the chance to go to all of them, but
off and on some of them.
Yeah, I try to make my appearances. I try and participate as much as I can when, I'm a part of, since the COVID thing, you definitely can't do it, but part of, so I can get the card. But I'm a part of a crew that we dress up for cosplay, and we do events for. The last one I did was an auction for like books and stuff at the Rock and Roll Hard Rock Cafe place.
Okay.
In town, the Gene Simmons place. I can't find the card, but I'm trying to remember the name of our group, but which is bad because I should plug it in.
New Mexico Avengers something. Was it an Avengers group?
No. It's like Comictopia.
Comictopia. Okay.
Maybe I have their card, which makes you feel all dumb for not having the card.
No, it's.
Anyways, but yeah, we do charitable events. I'll have to. Oh, you know what? No. While we're talking, I'll have to look it up. But yes, I participate. Like I said, the last one was that I dressed up as just a Iron Maiden guy. Like I was trying to look like Eddie, kind of.
Okay.
Because it was a hard rock place, so we were just trying to be a part of the theme.
Dope.
So it was pretty cool.
Nice. Because I've done a couple of costumes, and we have a cosplay group where we do like Avengers superheroes, like Marvel comic book characters. Mm-hmm. So I play the role as Spider-Man.
Oh.
Yeah, so I have the whole getup where it's an actual bodysuit with
Which Spider-Man is it?
Yeah, the Tobey Maguire one.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a really detailed suit and stuff. I've been hired a few times to do like children's parties and shit.
That's pretty cool.
But it's like, hey, can you come as Spider-Man? And I'm just like, okay, let's do it. And then I'm there, and then it's just like, God damn, I wish I could do Spider-Man stuff, though, because these kids are like, hey, Spider-Man, can you do a backflip? And I'm just like, I'm going to break my neck if I do a backflip.
True.
Yeah,
you got to be careful.
Yeah, but it's pretty fun, so it's hilarious.
All right, that's pretty cool. No, now that you say that, I'll just bring up the fact I ordered a bunch of games offline, like old classic games like PlayStation 2. I just ordered the original movie tie-in game for Spider-Man, so it's Tobey Maguire.
Okay.
But what is your favorite Spider-Man?
Oh, my favorite Spider-Man. Jeez, that's a good one. I guess it would have to be the Tobey Maguire one.
Really?
Because it was introduced to me like that. That was the first one that I saw.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you know this, but how old do you think I look? How old am I?
Well, I've seen your podcast before, so I've seen you say your age, but to me, you look like you're like 25.
Yeah, but I'm actually 30. Recently turned 30, and I saw that Spider-Man first, and after that.
Interesting.
Andrew Finkel, whatever.
Andrew Garfield.
Yeah. He's he's decent
and
too.
And the new one, he's pretty. I should know his name. I'm terrible.
What's his name? Tom Holland.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I've heard that he was an asshole though. Did you get? Have you ever
I really haven't gone too much into the behind the scenes to know if he was or not.
I've heard some of that behind the scenes bullshit where he kind of is one of those guys where it's like, I need my water. Where's my water? Why is my seat so cold? My seat's cold. I don't have no water.
I could see it.
So I don't know. But I mean, he's a good actor.
Oh yeah. Now I guess for me being introduced to, I'm just probably a year younger than you, probably by a couple months. So it's like I'm 29.
Okay.
But like I got introduced from the PlayStation game, just Spider-Man, for the PlayStation 1, and it was from the people who eventually made Tony Hawk Pro Skater, which shout out, they're doing a new Pro Hawk Skater.
Yeah,
at the end of the year.
That's gonna be sick.
So that's gonna be sick. But I guess my favorite Spider-Man would be Ben Reilly, which is a clone of Spider-Man. So you'd have to go into the comic book lore to know who he is. But he's just a straight straight red tight suit with no webs on it, and then a blue hoodie. And he's just a clone of Peter Parker from like a comic in the 60s. It's this crazy clone arc story.
Okay. So,
but he's pretty epic.
Yeah. So he gets cloned, and then that character just does a bunch of stuff. Yeah,
it's a big twist to how they make it go in, but essentially Ben Reilly is a big component to the Venom story back in when they were doing that whole thing. So him and Venom had a big old thing. That's like I was interested in seeing the new movie, but when I heard that the new movie they weren't going to have Spider-Man in it, and I kind of understood all the legalities to it, but I was like, Spider-Man, because Ben Reilly could have been a good introduction to that story.
Yeah,
but
that was pretty weird too. How they did that whole thing, like Sony and Disney were just kind of fighting with each other for Spider-Man rights. You know, it's just like, what the heck? It's just a character. Just let it go. We can get some great content out of it. But it was pretty. I think it's still like a pretty tough negotiation.
Yeah,
right?
I think they like. I'd have to look
I know they don't own it. I still think
Sony
still has it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sony still has it.
I think Sony actually is going to get more of the rights back because they, after that last Spider-Man movie, like I don't know how many more movie appearances for Marvel Tom Holland has as that Spider-Man contractually. I'm sure there's some sort of agreement there.
Yeah.
But we might actually see Venom and Carnage and then Peter Parker be mentioned. And if that kind of happens, I guess it's cool. The action in the movie was great, but yeah, it killed me that Spider-Man wasn't in it. Spider-Man. I will say this. Spider-Man 3, like you're saying, Tobey Maguire, your favorite. How do you feel about Spider-Man 3? A lot of people don't like Spider-Man 3 because there's certain scenes in it and things that happen.
Yeah, it was like it was pretty cheesy in some things. Like the bad guy, like a douchebag a little bit.
The scene where he's dancing in the street.
Yeah, it's so dumb. But I don't know. I technically don't really like the third one as much as the first two.
No, fair enough. The first two are pretty good. If the third wasn't kind of floppy, then I think that they could have kept going with Tobey Maguire and made more movies. But that one kind of like...
How does that even work, though, too? They're just like... This is what I've always found skeptical, is like they have literally the whole story of whatever they want, whatever universe, whatever adaptation of the superhero. They have the blueprint in the comic book. They can follow that so precisely with intense dialogue that they add with writers and stuff. But they never do. Like, there's a bunch of comic books or a bunch of superhero movies that you're just like, oh, I get where they're getting the inspiration from this genre. And then, oh, okay, when they switched a little more into the future. But it's not... Then they have their own love affair twist and, like, some weird shit. It's just like, oh, damn it, that sucks.
Yeah, I mean... It's all comes down to like sales and shit, I guess, right? I mean, like what's gonna... I feel like Andrew Garfield kind of had a good chance and then
ruined it. No.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, whoever wrote that kind of story, with the second one, especially the first one, fine, but like the second one. But I don't know. Spider-Man, he's pretty amazing.
Do you do you follow a lot of comic book? Like, do you know quite a bit of comic book?
Well, I wouldn't say I know a lot. Like I'm a massive lore, but I there's certain characters and stuff that I took myself to learn.
Yeah. What do you like? Go ahead.
I guess my story that I like looking up the most would be that like Cyclops and his family with his father Corsair and his brother Havoc on the X Factor.
Okay, so it's a big.
Yeah, no, it's really hard to say. Like, for instance, I like. You could say because I like Cyclops, I like the X-Men, so I know a lot of the X-Men story.
Yeah.
A lot of the other friends that I have probably have gone into the lore and had more chances to go into it more. I know I had like the first X-Men book I got at Astro Zombies comic book store. It's like the first 9 books of the original comic book X-Men series. They're like the masterwork. They're these black books that you can get.
Has most of it in it.
Yeah, it has most of all the original. You can get the rest of the volumes. I think I had the first volume. I had the first 4 volumes for Spider-Man. So like reading the original books like that. I don't know. But I have a big stack of comic books. So I started that kind of in 2011 when the first Comic-Con Ace started coming into Mexico. We didn't have a Comic-Con since like the 90s. We'd had other events, but not a full-fledged like San Francisco style.
Yeah, celebrities Comic-Con. And all that stuff.
Yeah, like what was that? Stan Lee.
Stan Lee, that was the one?
In 2011. And
that was pretty big. I remember an ex-girlfriend of mine went to that one.
Yeah, I had a shirt from Astro Zombies because I was promoting them at the time, and I had a whole bunch of people from that Comic-Con sign it. A bunch of famous people like Jeremy Bullock, who was Boba Fett.
Dope.
Who else did I get that? Ernie Hudson from Ghostbusters. A whole bunch of comic book artists from Artist Lane. A bunch of people who just like, if I come again, maybe I could bring that shirt. You might like to see that. Just a bunch of people that I just got. I started getting one signature, like my favorite comic book place to go to at Comic-Con. That's like, I guess for my favorite comic, if there's a current comic that's going, would be like Lady Death Comics. Okay. So I'm gonna go to meet Brian Pulido anytime I get. So like get a bunch. I get posters too when I go, but that's a whole nother thing. But because you got some good posters, I like what you got going on.
Yeah, the whole like the top stuff is all like the artists and stuff that I see from Comic-Con and shit. Like works that they do. Sometimes I get them to sign it and shit.
No, yeah, those are no. I absolutely get them to sign it when you get a chance to get them signed. Get them signed. Like the comic book I had Stan Lee sign was a Western comic book.
Okay.
It was like a 70s Old West comic book, and he's like, "That's an old one." And I was like, "All right."
Well, he knows.
Yeah, he knows. Because after a certain period of time, he stopped kind of being involved in the writing process of the comic books because he's getting older, and unfortunately, like he started losing his eyesight and like not being. He could read, but like I don't really know the extent of his abilities. But by the time I met him, he definitely. You needed to point at where the paper was for him to sign because it was hard.
Right here.
and it does that with time. I guess we both have glasses, so hopefully it doesn't get like that.
Yeah, that's that's one of my biggest hard parts too. Is like I don't know how people wear contacts and stuff too.
Oh yeah, I have never tried them for a costume before.
I'm not into it. Just like goddamn, I hate this shit. It's not.
I'd be willing to try it.
You never know. What if it's one of those things where like you like. Take off your glasses and you put contacts on, you become like that pretty girl, like that movie.
Just look just right,
You're just like, how the hell? Oh my god, I was doing it wrong this whole time.
Yeah.
I say that all the time about like just like every little thing. Like, I'm gonna cut my hair a little bit different. Wow, why does it look different?
No, yeah. The moment you do something different to your look, I know I need a haircut, so that's why I have my hat on. Otherwise, I wouldn't even have a hat on.
Yeah, it's been pretty bad with the whole quarantine stuff.
Oh, not being able to. I mean, I actually shaved my dad's head, which he was doing it for a donation thing for a friend thing.
Yeah.
But it's pretty difficult actually. If you want to go into that, I like the segue.
Shaving heads, yeah.
No, but for real, this whole shutdown thing. And then it kind of just bottlenecks all the way up into, I guess, people and police can't take it anymore. And now just everyone's killing each other in the streets. Not like literally, but definitely, like, for instance, not going to just mention the biggest event that just happened, but 2 events in Louisville where, like, for one, there was a couple, and one of them, this lady who was the victim, was a part trying to remember her name. Terrible with names.
It's okay.
Horrible names. But they were both sleeping in their house and just doing nothing, right? They're just chilling, freaking sleeping, and then officers who have a warrant for a no-knock warrant come in, and they basically break the door down. They're also not wearing uniforms, so they're not wearing their normal gear. And the male wakes up, the man, the boyfriend, he defends himself as well as he can. He fires back. They fire back, and, like, the woman is killed. 20 shots were fired, like, in this situation. The officers were in this position because they were coming after somebody who was already in custody. The person they were after, it was like he used a random mailbox, and that's why they were there, because he used their mailbox or something. I really don't know all the details, but essentially with the no-knock warrant, they just came in, shot him up. They're a black family. They're just 2 people. She's a first responder. That's what I was trying to say. She was a first responder officer. So if you look up the Louisville News, I was actually looking up so I could remember the names, but as soon as I get up here, it's just terrible.
Yeah. Right.
But and then during the protest, so that was in March when that happened. During the protests, officers fired on protesters with either rubber bullets or actual bullets. I don't know what they did. I have to go back and look that up because I was watching the Louisville News report from it. But there's this local restaurant owner who had been previously, before the quarantine, years before, always would give the police officers free meals. Would just be like, hey, yeah, come on to my house. He was a black man. He was just a cool guy in Louisville. Just the whole town knew him. He's killed during the riot or during the protest, whatever event was happening at that moment. I guess you could say it was bad place at the wrong time. How you say that, but apparently he was like outside of the store. So it's not like he was like a part of the whole thing or like in the midst of it. He was just outside of his owned what he owns, what his profit is, his own kind of slice of land. So, he could have thought he could be safe at his own place, but then it's like, it's insanity. It's like, why is this on top of that? So it's like, we have the coronavirus, we have this whole disease that's shut the country down, and then it just completely locked everything down, and just in ways that I didn't think were like possible. I didn't think that like every business was going to get shut down, because in the past, well, I actually haven't been alive while there's been I guess I have been alive while there's been a few pandemics. There was other reasons why they didn't need to shut the country down for swine flu or the original SARS virus in like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
There wasn't like some big purpose for them to like, I think as far as I know, they had it under control essentially.
Yeah, and it kind of seems like they were under control they've all were kind of under control the same way COVID is now. Like, again, they were speculating that so many people were going to die, hospitals are going to be overrun, and there was going to be no beds for anybody, but that didn't really happen.
I mean, I've seen a lot of crazy things. I've seen like pictures of them like with a bunch of ditches and a bunch of boxes in them of all the bodies, but I don't know how factual or when the picture was taken. You don't know you got to know all the facts if you're going to actually know for sure what that you're looking at in that image.
Yeah, that's true.
But I don't know. I just feel like it's such a what I realized the other day, it was like we're being muzzled. Like we all have to wear the face mask. Like you're interviewing a clerk. So I run the use scan at Smith's in Edgewood. I also run a check stand, so I'm a cashier.
Yeah.
So I'm for Smith's, we are a part of Kroger, so that's like a union kind of thing. So it's kind of different than Walmart, but I'm sure Walmart's a little bit more stricter, honestly. But we all have to wear our masks.
Yeah.
Like it's like in the store, we put up signs saying that it's required to wear masks, but we were told by higher ups basically that like we're not to enforce it. You can't, like I was already told in training, when you get hired, you can't just put your hands on somebody. You can't take their groceries away. I saw this video at Costco where this guy took his groceries away because he didn't have a mask. Like, the dude already shopped.
Yeah, and you're just like, isn't this in your training protocol just because you can't add this?
I mean,
because
I guess Costco might have different for their Walmart, their the whole that brand.
Yeah.
Or not Costco. Costco's not a part of that, actually. That's Sam's Club, but it was at a Costco.
Yeah. They're all the same.
Yeah, they're all the same.
They're all owned by a douchebag that makes millions.
Kroger's a little different because they're a little cheaper. But essentially, yeah, like, I feel like we're being muzzled. And there's a lot of people who are really scared. A lot of people who, if the virus is really is, should be scared because they have pre-existing conditions. They're older people. So they're all worried. I see them every day. They're wearing their masks. And I can't hear what they're saying when they're talking, so they're like all muzzled. It's like some sort of mind control, you could say.
Yeah.
Where like everyone's kind of forced into a position where now they're wanting to put the mask on. It's like you can't tell a bunch of people you got to wear this. Oh, you can, but you have to have a reason to tell them. You can't just tell them for no reason. Now you're going to wear this muzzle. You're going to wear this mask, and you're going to like it. You're going to have to like it. Now people want to wear them.
Yeah.
They want to feel safe. I know some some people in my family who work as nurses who are desperately scared, who have seen other patients, not like a shit ton, like not like floods and floods of people where like you're saying, like how they were saying how like there's overflow of beds. And I'm sure maybe at some hospitals, but I swear the media probably made it seem like every hospital in America is overflowing with beds. But that's not the case.
Yeah, that's how it's not.
It's absolutely not the case. And certain places are worse than others. But yeah, I feel like there's this weird mentality, mind control to wear like a muzzle, to wear a mask. I noticed it the other day when I was like talking to someone, and I have to wear masks. It's a part of my job. So like, I don't know if you saw part of my Facebook story, I had that mask on when I was listening to the music. But
gangster rap, right?
Gangster.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wu-Tang.
Yeah, there you go.
But I listen to all kinds of stuff. I see you got like Iron Maiden and Metallica. I got my
Grateful Dead shirt.
Yes. So I listen to a variety of things.
That's the best part about music too. It's just there's so much out there.
Mm-hmm,
but with the whole mask thing, I kind of feel what you're saying, where it's kind of like you are kind of forced into a position where you have to wear the mask. But if you don't wear the mask, they made it so awesome. What they've done is this, like, okay, the people that do wear masks are going to shame the people that don't wear masks.
And it happens all the time.
And it's gonna kind of make them wear the mask, or it's going to start dividing people.
Like I was saying, the grocery store clerk took that guy's basket away. I saw some old there. I have another clerk friend of mine, and she was hugging a customer because they know each other for a long time. You wouldn't think about it any other time. Wouldn't even think about it. You're like, they're hugging each other, they're friends, whatever. But there was this old man, and I mean, he wasn't just an old man, he was a veteran, right? I should give him a little bit of respect. He had his veteran hat on. He was an old veteran man.
Understandable. America.
He could have pre-existing conditions and maybe had every right to be worried. Mm-hmm. But he was so upset when they hugged. Like he looked at me and he was like, he didn't want to go through my lane anymore because the person in front of my lane, was hugging a customer because they breached that 6 foot distance. And there's no way to I don't get it when we're at the check stands. They put these plexiglass things and like you have a row here, plexiglass thing, the lane, and then the next check stand and the next cashier is right there. They don't have anything to block behind them. So there's no way to stop that 6 foot. Like, it's impossible.
Yeah, that's not, yeah.
So he's not worried about that, but he's worried about him hugging the customer. And like, I don't know, I just saw this worry in his, like, he was upset. He wanted to go tell the manager, and I was like, all right, sir, I mean, go ahead. I mean, I can't stop, if he feels worried, if he should go tell them, whatever, and yeah, I just noticed that, like,
that mentality was just like,
yeah, there was actually another argument. I didn't know all the details, but same kind of situation where just somebody without a mask argued at somebody with a mask argued at somebody without a mask. And I can understand, but like, I don't know. It's like there's a freedom. Well,
again, they're going to shame them into wearing the mask, and if not, it's going to cause a fight. Like, this is what's so bad about everything, is like there's so many like layers of what's going on here, and it's kind of it's hard. It's hard to think about, because you got your freaking the COVID virus going on, and then you have this peaceful protest going on, mixed in with a handful of looters and rioters.
Oh yeah.
And now that's causing everybody kind of to forget about the COVID scare.
That's what's insane.
We were all supposed to be, having to wash our hands, social distancing and stuff. But you see people out there in the streets sharing spray cans. Like, I have water for you. I brought you water. Like, what the heck is going on there? Like, that blows me away. I don't understand.
Well, I mean, it's like going from being able to do all the freedoms that you have been able to do to suddenly now your shop is closed and you can't open your shop.
Yeah.
Like, instantly. So that for a homeless person, maybe it might not seem totally immediate, but like one day you're able to get on the bus with a couple change, and then suddenly, like, I mean, I don't know exactly all it is, but the whole bus, I've seen buses, they're all taped off and stuff. You can't use the bus.
Really?
Or like, yeah. Well, like in March and April, like a lot of the, like, I maybe I could look it up, or actually Jeremy, the last person on the show, he was riding the bus, and he sent me a picture of when he was riding the bus, and it was just straight, like, taped off. So it's like a bunch of people couldn't be on the bus. So suddenly you're able to go to one part of town really fast, and now that's gone. Done. Like, I mean, I don't know if public transportation is open since Monday. They said they're going to open up a bunch of stuff. Stuff's kind of opening up now, but as stuff is, like, it made me so upset when I heard that we were going to open up Monday, but Sunday night the town got tore up.
Oh, like, yeah.
I can't even understand. I can't fathom it sometimes. Okay. I kind of in the know with some of the older, well, not all the older protests, but like I was part of the 99% protests.
Okay.
So like I did the whole 2011 worried about 2012 protest stuff, and I was on the news for like 2 seconds. I gave this lady a whole speech of why we were having our protest and what we were talking about with the banks and being able to take out loans and all that bullshit, and how they like make you kind of take out, well, not make you kind of take out, but they entice you so much, and then you take out the loan for your school and your class, and it was a whole deal with that. In the 99% protest with New Mexico and the banks. Not even go into that, but like I talked to people, and they were telling me like they did their vigil at, like 400 people showed up for the George Floyd vigil, like that Sunday night, or that Sunday, I should say, and then it kind of got darker as it got done. They all left, but a couple people were telling me that they were seeing like people in cars and trucks off to the distance and stuff, just hanging out, not even a part of the vigil or the protest or anything like that. They kind of got released later on after and started doing the stuff.
Okay. And
like I said, I don't know all the facts. I gotta keep admitting that unless I truly have facts to back up everything. But yeah, like the protests weren't even a part of, and maybe who knows? There's no way to tell. Like I wasn't there, so I can't really speak for anybody who even rioted or broke windows. But if you did, why?
Yeah, it's childish, and it makes it seem like we're trying to like show ourselves as like a society that's actually working harder to protest, but there is a really difference between a protest and a riot. Like,
yeah, and history has done a lot of different things. I don't really want to go through the whole Tea Party thing, but a more recent thing is Martin Luther King was like assassinated right after trying to give black people rights. You could not sit next to a white person if you were black on a bus. No go.
Right.
It was illegal. You were going to get arrested. He was trying to make that so that you weren't arrested. He got assassinated. America rioted for like 6 days, a long time. And at the end of that time period, they signed the Civil Rights Act. They like made a law happen because everyone went nuts. Everyone was just like, we can't take this anymore. Someone was actually amassing a bunch of people in a peaceful way, and then he was just taken for no, like, there's probably, that guy is a white supremacist, I think, the guy who murdered him. Someone sent me, because I was asking somebody the other day who that guy was who killed him, and they did find out who killed him was like a white supremacist guy.
Yeah.
But seriously, something like that, and then America just unleashed on their local places, just like they did today. And you know what? We went like since last week to this week. In 1 week, there was a few riots, and now all 4 people who were participated in the death of George Floyd, let alone the other 2 things that I mentioned earlier today. I don't know who murdered. There's no telling to say who killed the shop owner guy at the restaurant, and there's no telling. Oh, they probably actually have the officers who killed that first responder lady. But all 4 of the officers that participated in the George Floyd, the guy who was kneeling and the guys that were watching, not telling the officer, all right, he's handcuffed. It's been 8 minutes. Now, I don't want to totally interrupt the podcast, but like, I've been listening to a bunch of podcasts lately, and they've been doing this whole 8-minute silence thing. I don't know. We don't really have to do it because a bunch of people have technically do it. And another person explained it to me better. When you do like a silent thing, let's have a couple minutes of silence. It's really good when you have a crowd of people to actually take in the silence. But like 8 minutes is a long time to like not breathe.
Yeah, it's troubling to think about. Like, there's people that can't even do it for like less than 3. So.
Yeah, how long can you hold your breath? Can you hold your breath for like a minute? Can you count to 60 holding your breath? I don't really want to try right now. But
yeah, but it seems like it's hard. Like, just the way that it happened is just so horrific. It's
like people were telling the officers to stop in an 8-minute time period. Now I can't vouch for officers' feelings and the tension. I don't know what the situation was, but once a person's in handcuffs, there's not a bunch they can do. They can flail around like a fish, and you can step back,
right,
and you can just let them flail around like a fish if they're wild flailing fish. But like, they're handcuffed, they're apprehended, you arrested them.
Yeah, there's enough people there. The situation is handled.
Yeah, I mean, have you played Grand Theft Auto 5?
I've played a few times, yeah.
Have you played, like, definitely the online portion?
I haven't.
Well, on the online portion, you cannot get arrested in the game. There's no arrests. As soon as you start doing something bad, the officers gun you down. I don't know if that's just a silly programming thing that they set up. But online, you can't get arrested. There's no jail. Your car can get impounded. If you get killed by the cops, you'll respawn and your car gets responded. But that's how it happened. They didn't arrest the guy. They killed him. Like,
yeah, just quick.
Like, and I don't know if he was purposely trying to kill him. It's a 2nd-degree murder, I guess, is what he's being charged with. So, I know 1st degree is full intent trying to murder someone. I don't know what 2nd degree is. You might have to look that up. But, like, and none of the other officers decided to do a thing to say, hey, all right, he's apprehended. Let's actually stand him up and put him in the cop car. And if he was trying to get something with a fake $20 bill, let's charge him for that. Let's charge him for that. Let's not kneel on his neck until he's dead. Like, let's charge him. Like, let's do our job.
Yeah.
Like, but the other 3 officers, they didn't stop. And now, after all the riots, all 4 of them are wearing orange jumpsuits. We don't know if they'll be charged with those crimes, but they're being charged. We don't know if they'll be held guilty.
Yeah, it's so weird, and it is without intent and effect.
No, okay. So I guess he wasn't trying to kill him, right?
That's so sad. Ken, what's up? Thank you for joining. We're here hanging out, just having a conversation, talking about all the shit that's going on here in the world. Let us know what you guys' input is. If you guys have some questions, concerns, comments, just type them in. Let us know what you guys are thinking. But again, it feels like it's like I love all the memes and stuff about it too, because it's like, oh, is God fucking with us right now, or like our aliens are probably laughing their ass off right now.
That one's kind of an old one, but one of my favorite newest ones is a SpongeBob meme, and I have it really fast, but it's basically Bikini Bottom on fire, and they're just like, well, Patrick, we've solved police brutality, and the town's on fire.
Ken, we're just here hanging out, just like I said, chatting about anything, different topics, different whatever comes up, looking up memes.
Yeah, I felt it was accurate.
I saw that one,
and like we're talking about, it kind of is accurate. People rioted after Martin Luther King's assassination. A whole new rule, a whole new law, like freedom to a whole people who are equal to every other people. Like if you're a human being, you're equal to every other human being, besides whatever physical traits or genetic. I guess I don't want to get too into that, but like,
yeah, because that's a fine line thing too.
But I will say, yes, all lives matter. But like when a certain class of people are being put down more than others, like I seen. Actually, one of the protests I seen earlier today, the peaceful protest was over, and the officers were starting to march and clear everyone out, and then it was just this white guy, right? It was just this old 75-year-old white guy. Now, my question is, why did he start walking towards the line? Don't walk towards the line. Don't walk towards the line. But he started walking towards the line. He pushed him over, and it was very graphic. It was on Young Turks. I don't know if you watched that channel, but it's a news reporting thing, and they show it, and his head just bounces off the pavement, his ears start bleeding, and the rest of the officers are like the SWAT guards are just marching over him.
Yeah,
they're not stopping to say, "Hey, we just pushed this guy down." There's not a raging crowd in front of them.
Yeah, so there's no need for excessive force,
and he wasn't the minority. So I'm not going to be like, oh, that's kind of like what I was making there.
Ken said he saw that. Yeah.
See, like, it's just one of these things. It's like, I don't know, but like I was saying,
Tracy 43, cops are still abusing their power. Still no lesson learned, though.
It all comes down to the training. It all comes down to...
That's so hard, yeah, because it's a yin and yang thing. Like, unfortunately, there are bad cops in there, but there's still the good ones in there, too.
Well, my aunt is a part of APD, actually. She's a very good officer. She's never had to pull out her gun ever in, like, over a decade, because she's worked there since, like, 2004, 2005. I can't remember when I seen her graduate, but, like, it all comes down to, like... Also, how you take the training. My aunt is someone who will take someone like George Floyd, who just tried to buy something with a forged dollar, and treat him like a human being. If he gets out of hand, she has ways to make them not hurt her, but also not kill them.
Yeah. And
she's been trained properly, and she's taken in that training. She's professionally taken in what she was taught. So I think what happens is that there's a lot of definitely older officers on the force that maybe the training for, like, do you remember the James Boyd thing with that homeless man on Tremley?
I think so, yeah.
He was just some homeless man, and he got straight beanbagged, sicked on by dogs, and there was like 5 officers all surrounding him. And yeah, he died. And he had a little knife on him. That's what he had. A little knife on him.
Yeah, that was such a big thing, too.
Yeah, a little bitty knife on him. Just a little thing. There's 5 officers.
Yeah.
There's 5 officers.
A homeless guy. Up in the mountains. Not bugging anybody.
That's kind of where my aunt, like I lived up there close, and so I was, like, wondering why all this commotion up here on Copper.
Yeah.
And I come to find out, just some homeless guy sleeping in somebody's, not necessarily backyard, but backyard. He was sleeping in someone's backyard. He was breaking the law. Yes, he was homeless.
Yeah.
They did not handle the situation nearly as good as any normal human being could have. I feel like I went up there and told him, "Hey, you can't sleep up here." He wouldn't freak out at me.
Yeah.
Like I feel like maybe he was on drugs. Maybe when they got there, he was like, "Rah!" But then they shot him up with beanbags, sick dogs on him, not horses.
For a very long time.
It wasn't like, let's cuffs and just set him here until he calms down or something. Like,
no, shoot him, send the dogs, shoot him probably again.
like I'm saying, and just because of the training, maybe it's how you take the training, and maybe it is the individuals themselves as people, and not just I'm a cop. I want to kill black people. I don't really see that, and I think a lot of people definitely recently see that. They see he's a cop. He wants to kill black people. I feel like really comes down to that person and what they choose to do with their power. Spider-Man said, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
So it's like,
we can see that shift. Like, we can see who uses it the right way and who doesn't. And obviously this is an example of a lot of police officers that use it the wrong way. And there are those injustices where we're just like, it's about time we can actually stand up and do something for it. But is it going to help? Because again, you see the peaceful protests and stuff, but then you see cops running people over with cars, horses trampling people. I'm just like, wow.
I did see a rider manage to steal a horse. I don't know if anyone watching saw that, but there was a video of some guy riding a horse like, I stole the horse. And I was like, what? You stole a horse?
Really?
Oh my God. Yeah, but no, you're right. It's crazy. I've seen pictures of little kids, and trust me, I'm an advocate for saying if you got a little kid and you want to go to a protest that things might get a little violent, even if you think things won't get violent. If you bring, it's so risky bringing kids out in public. You know what? I feel if you have a child, COVID-19 is out, you should keep your kid at home. If you have a kid that's younger than 16, younger than 15, younger than 14 actually. If you have a kid that's younger than 14, don't even bring him anywhere close.
Dude, that's not... Yeah, no.
But I've seen pictures of little girls who were just in the line of fire and got hit with rubber bullets in the face. I've seen... Reporters. I seen a reporter get arrested, and he was a CNN reporter, so whatever, but like he was being arrested, and maybe it was staged, who knows? We don't... context means everything. You got to be there to know the truth. But in the video, it just shows some other rider or whatever, and it was actually cleared off, so everything was pretty much over. But there was one extra person, and they apprehended him for whatever reason. It's unknown. But they were behind the reporters. The reporters were reporting. He was just in front of a camera with his mic.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, they're like, you're under arrest.
Yeah.
And he's a black reporter. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but like well, maybe he wasn't black, maybe he was just dark skinned, but like
I think I saw that one too. I know what you're talking about.
Getting arrested.
Then they do the cameramen and stuff.
And he gives an interview after, and they question him on his reasoning, and he doesn't really say much because they didn't really tell him much. But basically, the officers were just too tense. The situation was they had to just get everyone out of the area, and since they're citizens, technically the press is citizens. The citizens weren't moving. They weren't getting out of the area, so they all got apprehended. It's still very serious. Still very silly to me because I've seen videos of reporters in like war and combat and stuff. And
where they're just literally
bullets
in
are
the hail
around.
Of gunfire, and they're just still there like, we're here with Chet Jackson.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, it was very eerie and weird. It's just very...
But then again, even I don't know. I feel I've heard this saying. I recently. Have you ever seen the show Ozark? No, it's okay. I heard this saying in Ozark. This quote that they say that politicians say a lot, I guess. But don't let a good crisis go to waste. Oh. So I feel like this, even though all the stuff here in America is happening, there's cards and things being turned on a bigger, higher scale that we can't even comprehend.
I'm glad you kind of took us to that level.
That literally, I'm pretty sure we're going to go into the deep conspiracy of the world actually just being controlled by the 1%, or just, it's weird because, like, think of it, like, again, we are having all these problems here. We are fighting. We are doing wars and stuff, but what's not to say China is watching with a fine-tooth comb where it's just like, oh, this is exactly what we needed.
Oh, yeah.
This is exactly what we wanted. And then all of a sudden they make moves with other countries. And they have been making moves. I don't know if you know this, but in South Africa, they've actually lent a bunch of money to them to rebuild whatever they wanted, but they have rights to ports there. So they build like shipping ports and stuff to be able to like transfer goods faster. But... so that South Africa doesn't have to pay the debt. for hundreds of years.
I see.
Unless China calls it.
Yes.
So they kind of put them in this, like, pretty much in this, like, bottleneck where they just really can't get out, where it's just like, okay, here's all this money, do whatever you want, but in about 50 years we're literally taking over this whole section.
Yeah, and I think okay, so like I'm not the biggest supporter of Trump, but I am definitely not supporting what the World Health Organization is doing right now, and we wouldn't even have this coronavirus thing if it wasn't kind of for them sleeping in bed with China. But Trump came out and said he wants to take funding away from the World Health Organization. I kind of disagree in some parts, in the sense that while we're in a pandemic, we need all the support we can get.
Yeah.
So I kind of am like, oh no, we kind of need that help. But on the other half of the coin, I'm like,
they're influenced by.
They knew, like, okay, so November, we're talking last year, 2019. That's why it's COVID-19. Last year, China knew they were already having infections. They were already having problems. Like, I have to go look up the statistics. Well, there are no statistics. Like I said, it really is kind of all hearsay, because the World Health Organization didn't do anything kind of till like we in America didn't shut down till like what? Like March, huh?
Yeah, like early. No, even before that.
Well, in November. Yeah, well, it was like, because it was right at my birthday, because before my birthday, well, a bunch of shit happened to me, but like it was right around then. I remember, because I was working at the store and everything was, can't have chairs at Starbucks, blah 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 blah, all that shit. China and the World Health Organization, I should say, knew that there was going to be an outbreak, and I'm such a facts person. I want to let you guys know the facts, but I also want to know that they are facts myself.
Yeah.
But what I know is that basically they knew about the virus, and there's actually a virus facility for testing those specific strains of the SARS virus and influenza and stuff by Wuhan, and that there was these vials that got smuggled out, and they were caught in customs. There was this person who had like 21 vials, like 21 of the vials. If you look up, actually, if anyone was watching, if you look up David Wilcox, he talks all about it. And he's way better than I could. I'm like very paraphrasing it. But like essentially a virus broke out, and they knew, like, okay, so just to get to my real point, January, there's this doctor in China who was helping patients who were infected with the virus.
Yeah.
And many people have heard about this. He was suppressed by the World Health Organization and China. If he would have been able to talk to the world in January and let people know that people are getting sick, we don't exactly know the strain, we don't know what's going on, I'm just a doctor helping people, but people are getting sick in China. This is the beginning of the year. It was like a Lunar New Year or something for China, so people were able to leave but not come into the country. It was very strange, actually, the way everything went down. That's why I was mentioning the vials. Is it in a sense that, like, I don't want to go crazy with the whole depopulation thing, but we're already there. There's a whole thing with Bill Gates and him talking a long time ago about we're not ready for a virus. I bet if we got a virus today, that we would not be able to deal with it properly, and that this is kind of, I don't know. Have you heard of Agenda 21? It's this. Basically, it happens in 2021, or not 2021. As like trying to think of what year it's supposed to happen in. Definitely like 10 or more years from now, if I'm not correct. But Agenda 21 is a depopulation effort thing, and a part of it is unleashing a large virus, and so like. From the David Wilcox thing that I know, or like he kind of put on points that I put it together myself, essentially, that the virus is being tested on with the population efforts. So like trying to, like, they didn't have a good enough virus that was strong enough to just depopulate instantly like that. They didn't have something that was strong, so they had to do a test. And so essentially part of it is that they we're testing a very contagious virus, not just a deadly virus, but just very contagious. So they're specifically trying to pick out the proteins in the virus that make it like anybody. It spreads really fast. You don't know if you have it, and you could spread it to other people first before they get the killing part down. And I think this is like a test. So like there's a lot of layers to it. Like I was talking about muzzles earlier, but that's the big underlining thing here is that you have, I don't know if you've heard of the Georgia Guidestones, which are another thing.
Yeah, they have, it's the stones that are written in so many different languages of the exact same thing.
Yes. And
I don't remember the exact number, but it does say that the population will never reach a certain number, right?
Yeah. It was like in the 60 millions, if I'm not correct, which we are in the 80 billions.
Yeah, that's already like way past what it's supposed to be.
Think of a virus that killed half of 80 billion people right now, just like that. That's what they want. And they don't have that yet. They don't have something that's able to cut the planet in half and end it like that.
They don't have anything yet.
And that's what this whole thing is about. It's a test. Do you remember, or have you ever heard of George Orwell?
Yes.
And his stories were so unique because he said them on the radio in a way as if he wasn't reading from a book. Like he's reporting it happening. And people freaked out. People went to the stores. They went and got groceries. They thought that they got their stacks of toilet paper, essentially. They were so worried that there was an actual alien invasion that they believed it. It was eventually, if I'm correct in what I know, is that it was secretly it was a test. So we were going to expose people to the extraterrestrials. Would they be ready? Let's do a radio show and see if it works. And it didn't work. Like people freaked out. People, extremely religious people, especially, which had their whole belief systems about to be shattered.
And that makes sense too.
You're hearing that first, the planet to you because you believe in God and God made the firmament and you can't get past the firmament and blah 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 and dome and flat earth blah blah blah. I don't really want to totally go into that, but you have this belief system and now you're hearing on the radio and you believe it. You're not just, this isn't something that like you're like listening to it. You just came out of church maybe and you're like, the UFO is landing, the guy is coming out of the ship, and you don't know what rockets are because they haven't even gotten to that point. Actually, we didn't hit the space race quite yet. We probably were launching stuff out, but we weren't like, they were talking about a flying saucer and some being coming out of it, and they believed it. And their whole belief system, they're like freaking out. They went and built bomb shelters. They went and got groceries. And where I'm going with this, essentially, it was a test. And just like COVID-19 right now is kind of like a test. Like how people are going to react to being able to stay at home, forced to stay at home. How people are going to react to not being able to do the things that they would normally do every day, like going to a movie or going to a restaurant. How people are going to be able to, will they do it? Will they stay at home? And pretty much a lot of people have stayed at home. I mean, it is kind of, I know a lot of people that, to me, the virus is enough to make me know that it's a serious virus. It's like, I know that much, so enough for people to, their fears are kind of justified. So maybe they should be wearing the mask, but it's like, it's a whole organized effort or test, to the shock test, essentially.
Because I've been a firm believer of that too, that the government kind of introduces stuff to you in a certain way before it's actually introduced to you. Because think of I'm more than likely sure in our lifetime we have to see an alien soon.
Oh yeah.
Why, dude? We've seen so many different representations of them. So many. When we see it, it's not going to be as shocking as I think it is.
Well, like I was saying, it's actually, there's a word for it. It's called desensitization. Actually, is what it's called. And when you've been for instance, my introduction to aliens. This is just the tip of the iceberg. My introduction was, I went to the library in my elementary and middle school, and I'd go to the science fiction area and I'd read books. And the ones that I go to the most, which were in the science fiction section, were
Dennis, are you here? Dennis!
What?
Never mind. There's one in the refrigerator, right? Yeah.
I would get UFO books. Like
Yeah.
I would get like stories of people being abducted and stuff like that. And I would be so into it. I'd be like, wow, this is. I know it's in the science fiction. It can't be true. Like it can't be real. But like I was just so intrigued in it. And eventually I started just getting into stuff. I didn't totally fall for it. I mean, not. I shouldn't say fall for it. I didn't totally know the truth until one of my friends went on a journey to another state and came back after watching a bunch of YouTube videos. And then he told me about what he had seen and told me about David Icke, told me about Stuart Swerdlow.
Oh man,
Told me
David
about-
Icke. I remember him when I was a kid too, like
I just
back in the day.
looked it all up. I went and just,
Into too big of a rabbit hole, right?
oh yeah.
Dude.
And I dug until I couldn't dig as much as I could anymore.
The pen cartridge
There's one in there, right?
in the refrigerator?
Yeah, there should be one. It's the one that we got from your guy.
Yeah.
If not, then I don't have it anymore.
I'm able to use this in here.
Yeah, go for it, man. But I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
The rabbit hole.
Yeah, just David Icke, Apocalypse, but
The reptilian agenda.
But when I ended up learning about that stuff too, I learned a lot about David Icke's agenda as well too. Like, how many times have you not wanted to learn about knowledge without having to pay for knowledge?
I will admit, for Stuart Swerdlow, I bought some of his books. I did. I
Yeah.
totally. Now I've never went to a David Icke seminar, so I like never went and paid like hundreds of dollars to wait in the line for him to talk, which is essentially what people do.
Yeah.
Like they'll spend a lot of money to go cross country and wait in a big old line. They haven't done it in a long time. I don't think I've been watching actually a whole big thing with him just recently happened that got me going like, okay, what he's talking about, I need to listen to, because he's talking about 5G. He's talking about how like crazy things that I'm like, as if like, imagine this. What if there was no virus and it's actually negativity that's making people sick? That's causing like the world is just filling up with so much stuff, and he's just going on this whole thing, and I'm like, whoa, this is a little bit too much, but still in a sense that like, yeah, like, what was it? I read a lot of his book, The Reptilian Agenda, which is kind of is an expensive book, and like you're saying, how much you're gonna spend money for knowledge. Knowledge always has a price, whether you spend it with cash or not, though. I think. Whether you use cash or not, or someone passes on the knowledge somehow you're paying a price for getting to expand what you already know, or your library of thoughts has now included more volumes,
Yeah.
you should say.
Because that's always blowing me away too, is like the vast amount of knowledge is so hard to comprehend with how much we can actually think of.
And I guess just to go there, what I've learned through Stuart Swerdlow and other people like David Wilcox who have talked about the Akashic Records. I don't know if you've heard about the Akashic Records, which is this Buddhist. It's a Hindu thing. Yeah, and basically it's like an encyclopedia that's all around us, and it only takes your focus to like start reading. You know, you just have to focus. Like essentially, you already know all the answers to everything. Just gotta focus on it, and then you can reach. Like you already know the answers to, will I have the job that I want? You just have to like start making it. Like you could say, I know that I want my own place, and you can kind of make it happen. So it's a part of that kind of system too. And essentially, I don't know what it took to get this pad that you got here, but essentially you probably at one point was like, I want my own place. And everybody does that. So I guess another way to explain it is infinite consciousness compartmentalized. So it's like everyone's kind of doing the same thing, but we're all separated, but we're connected. And through this huge connection, the information is already there. Like, it's like the answers to all the equations are pretty much already answered. It's just a matter of flipping the chalkboard around, and it's so hard to do that. I don't think humans at their level that they are now could like make things move with their mind. Maybe some. I've actually seen some crazy. I forgot her name. God damn it! There's this Russian lady. She's an old lady, and she was making these She was making the stuff move on the table, and it's this old video. Actually, and there's a true story behind her. There's a whole thing behind it, but
because there's been even those little like devices too that you put around your head to try to make things levitate and stuff like that.
Going actually, I don't want to ping pong all over the place, but we're actually gonna stay kind of here. Going to the apparatus that you put on the head. There's a movie called The Forbidden Planet where in a point in the movie, and Leslie Nelson is in the movie. I don't know if you know who Leslie Nelson is.
He's about to find out.
A Naked Gun and stuff like that. But he plays a very serious role, and he meets a madman on a planet who is left in the remnants of an ancient alien palace. And one of the things in this building, palace, whatever you want to call it, foundry, or it was actually probably a power plant, is a device that when you put it on your head, it kind of gauges your smartness. It kind of gauges your thoughts. And when a normal human puts it on, it actually kind of projects a little image. Now, they're assuming that the aliens were so advanced that when they put it on, their intelligence would actually make physical things appear. Like they felt, and this is just a movie. You know, this is a 1960s movie, right? So like
a cool concept still.
And like you sit in the chair and you put this thing on and it does this stuff for you, or like it's just a technology combined with your own intelligence. There's something called the Montauk Project, which is a real thing that Stuart Swerdlow was a part of. Which at Montauk Point in New York, they were testing this chair that they found at Roswell. So there's supposedly at the Roswell crash, part of the ship was a chair. Essentially, the ship was just a ship and a chair, and there's no buttons, there's no keypads, there's no nothing. It's a chair. So they had to reverse engineer the technology. There were windows of sorts, and that's kind of like how they got. I don't want to go without sourcing any facts, but essentially, yeah, they found this chair, and at Montauk Point, they tested on people. And I should remember this guy's name, Al Bielek. I remember the names I'm supposed to remember. So Al Bielek was the person who tested the chair himself as a human and had supposedly time traveled in the chair. But there's tons of videos on YouTube if you want to look it up, Al Bielek and Stuart Swerdlow on the Montauk Project and this chair that the government and the CIA project, or maybe not CIA, but working with extraterrestrials, I mind you. Like, apparently they're like, he's just walking around. It's crazy to think that, like, if it's true that this whole time, like you were saying earlier, aliens won't invade because like all the stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
What if they're already here and or never left? Like, it goes really, Stuart Swerdlow goes really deep with like Atlantis.
So is it that whole sense of like they kind of work with us, or is it too advanced that we just never can tell that they're among us?
I think at certain points that they weren't communicating, and at certain points there were, because there's points in history where I feel like we took that technology from the UFO, and if we would have been able to reverse engineer it then with our own human hands and our own human brains without anything else, we would have had more. We would have had cell phones and technology. Where's my fucking cell phone?
Sooner.
We would have had this sooner. We would have been able to do this a lot sooner. But they weren't talking to us then. For some reason, maybe the crash happened. And there's this other thing, Project Blue Book. No, not Project Blue Book. Trying to remember all these fucking stupid government names for their projects. But essentially, there was one president. I wonder if it's Jimmy Carter. I'm trying to remember. No.
That actually interacted with
Oh,
us?
yeah. Had to, like, go out to the base and do this whole thing where he's like, okay, we will let you have some DNA if you exchange technology with us. If you give us and show us how to reverse engineer stuff that we found, if you show us stuff and work with us, I'll commit the worst thing to humanity and let people be taken. Now, I don't know. I'm trying to remember which president. I shouldn't have said Jimmy Carter because I don't remember which guy it was. But
Well, I love how you mentioned that too, because I don't know if you've ever heard of this thing called the Alien Race Book, and it was released by like Russians and stuff like that.
Maybe.
And then it literally is a book from A to Z that has hundreds of races of aliens in it.
I can name a bunch of them.
But listening into there was one race that really stood out to me in particularly that said they talked to Richard Nixon.
That wasn't the person I was trying to remember his name, but that was in a time period, definitely the 70s, where they were in communication.
Okay, so what happened was that Richard Nixon didn't want to communicate with the aliens because he feels that they had too much of a deeper understanding. They can literally read his mind and get the like launch codes if they wanted to.
Essentially.
That's what he thought. So he never met with these aliens. And they were supposed to return in the coming years of 2020.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
But it still hasn't, I don't know if it's happened or if there's any indications of it, but that's one of those stories that is just like, what the fuck? Like, blows me away. And then not only that, the group, the Blue Men group, always represents themselves as alien beings. And there was a song in the 90s about a group of people, blue people, called, I don't remember what the song called, like, you know, like lime blue, la-di-dee-da.
I'm blue.
And it was a world of blue and stuff.
I am a blue house and a blue window. Yeah.
It blew me away. So I was just like, it was all too coincidental. I thought it was funny. I was just like, God damn, this makes so much sense.
Well, I will say the beings from Sirius A. Have you seen the movie Mastermind?
Mastermind.
It's a digital animated movie from DreamWorks.
I think you're thinking of Megamind.
Megamind, yes.
Yeah.
I got the name wrong.
Yeah.
Have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
That's what they look like.
The blues.
Absolutely 100%. They're one of the races that didn't really want to totally work with humanity, but they wanted, like, they had technology to share, and they had a hand in the pot since Atlantis. So they're like here now, and they wanted to do stuff now too. So there's multiple races that were involved, and I feel like because I feel like there's so many. Like, for instance, let's talk a little bit closer to home. Let's talk about Dulce, New Mexico.
Okay.
Phil Schneider, which was, and you can look him up. I saved his video every time it gets re-uploaded, which is this 3-hour-long seminar he did in 1995. And then in 1996, he was murdered, which it was considered a suicide, but fucking he was murdered.
Yeah, very coincidental.
Because what he talked about was insane. He was saying stuff like Dulce, New Mexico, which is like not too far from the Los Alamos base and those science labs up there. It's like another part. There's levels to this one base that is essentially, as you go down these levels, there's different extraterrestrials doing different things, and it gets deeper with clearance as you go down.
So is it like an essentially, if we're thinking of movie aspects like MIB?
Oh, yeah.
Like
yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of
yes,
aspect.
exactly. Because that movie just puts it in your face. That movie's like, here, it's a movie.
Yeah.
It's a movie. Oh, it's just a movie. And
Yeah.
that's there to desensitize you, like I was saying earlier. It's meant to make you like, oh, aliens? Oh, that's no thing. That's nothing.
I'm not scared of that, or I can deal with that now.
No, Phil Schneider, his job was to drill deep underground military bases. And one time, he was plotting out the points, because you put holes, and he talks about this in his seminar. And he drills down. This is in Dulce, New Mexico. And he starts drilling down. He's already cleared out a big space, so he's drilling down again, 4 corners. And one of his drills starts bringing up tech, like technology, like just bits and pieces of stuff. Just it was drilling into something.
Yeah.
And nasty smell started coming out, and all kinds of other stuff started happening. And it's called the Alien Wars, because essentially what happened is the ship was found. A lot of ships have been underground for a very long time. They've talked about cowboys coming up, and that's why there's the Aliens versus Cowboys movie. But they talk about how cowboys would come up to these giant caves and find ships inside, and either be told, or white. I can't explain why they wouldn't be able to come back to the world and say that there's a ship there, but essentially, they've been having ships on the ground for a very long time. And one of these ships got compromised, and the extraterrestrials came up to them and his experience is that this extraterrestrial, he pulled out his gun, right? Because it's the only thing he knows how to do, because he just carries this little PPK, is what he's talking about, this little Walter PPK little gun. And he has other people there with him. None of them have guns and stuff. They're just all engineers. They're just working down there. He has a gun because he's like the lead engineer. Something bad can happen. It's a little gun too, so it's just like he never probably had to use it. The extraterrestrials appear. I forgot how he says they appear, if they came out the hole or not. But they like wave their hand across their chest, and a bolt blasts. It like disintegrates his friend or like his coworkers, and like one of them hits him. And by the time that had happened, Marines are already kind of figuring out what was going down. They're coming down the elevator, and some Marines start going in and apparently having a firefight, and one drags him and puts him in the elevator and puts him up. It sounds like such a crazy like scene for a movie, but you watch him talk about it, and you watch him put up his hand, and he has this scar of like where the blast kind of hit him and kind of just disintegrated his fingers. And he's just talking about how he's like put in an elevator and he's sent up, and like a real police officer or a government official would, he honors the Marine that shoved him in the elevator. He's like, if it wasn't for that man, I wouldn't be able to tell you this story today. And it is so serious. I've seen a bunch of people talk about some other crazy shit, but when I look at Phil Schneider and I see him talking in front of all those people, like I'll show you the video that I had seen. It's like way too long to talk about, but he talks about this war that happened and how like he was involved in it ever since then. So basically they didn't tell him that there was an extraterrestrial ship, but they knew. So that's where he was like, the government knew that he was gonna find something down there, didn't tell him, and then this fight broke out. So he's always had this, he talks about how he had this deep-seated hate, and 1 year later, after giving this speech talking about all this stuff, and there's more to it than that, he gets freaking choked with a catheter. Like, because he had to use catheter, or maybe he didn't have to use catheter, but there's a catheter and there's no fingerprints, so he killed himself. Wow. When he's trying to do seminars, he's actively doing kind of what David Icke was doing, probably charging less, obviously, but he was having seminars where he'd have a bunch of people come into a gym and he'd talk to a bunch of people and tell them, he'd tell his story. And yeah, he just, think about that, is like he just got killed right a year after. And then it talks about that at the beginning of the video. It's just like 1 year later, he was murdered. I'm like, damn.
Yeah, that's kind of coincidental. Like, that just sucks too, because they say the more information that's got brought out too, it either just like we accept it, or they have to like get rid of the person that's giving it out. So it kind of makes it seem like, oh, it was just hogwash, or oh, it was just like this hooey fooey. You know, no one's really listening to it. No one cares. The guy died coincidentally, whatever. That's how it happened. And now it doesn't talk about it no more or anything like that.
Yeah. I
like that indication too, that where it's just like pretty much aliens have been here forever. Like they've been here longer than we can think of. And then we've seen so many different things about it too. Like I always bring up like the way Egypt and stuff is built. Like that's just fucking, that's all there before we ever thought of it there. Like, you know.
Now they say there's a whole, if you have a sit down with a historian, they'll talk about how the pyramids were built, and there's evidence to show that humans worked on pyramids. There's physical evidence that shows this. There's working tools, there's houses for workers. It's all there to give us enough evidence to write in a history book to say humans built these pyramids. But not all of them. Most of them, but not all of them. Especially the Great Pyramid, they say was built, I think Ramses the Great is for the big pyramid. I could be wrong. Maybe Ramses. I feel so dumb for like not being able to like get the facts. Okay. Essentially, like you're just saying, these places, especially the pyramids, were kind of here before. Like, it was a part of Atlantis. Like, at one point, the continents were kind of all together or not. I think there's a... well, I'm not a scientist, so I can't say, oh, well, Pangea didn't really happen that long ago. I can't really say that. I wouldn't say that, actually. But, essentially, there was Atlantis, and there was Lemuria. And they were, like, just opposite ends of, essentially, a water planet, because there is mostly water and just small continents. Something happened, which Stuart Swerdlow goes through in his book, Blue Blood, True Blood, how, like, essentially a comet came. Draco reptilians send this comet because
So it wasn't even an accident.
it wasn't even an accident. And I go deeper into the Draco reptilians and their whole purpose, but they use comets and planetoids as ships and weapons. So, like, they were trying to... There's this whole order of people in the Pleiades cluster, which are kind of the original human being. So, essentially, if we're going to go into that. And there's this whole thing with the Draco reptilians just not liking mammals. Maybe I really don't know what it is. It talks about it in Stuart Swerdlow's book. It's as far as I could say. But they don't. They hunted humans across the galaxy, and this was one of the edge points of the galaxy, and so they were trying to get this taken care of. So they sent a comet into the solar system, big comet, like huge. And at the time, there was no asteroid belt, and there was a planet between Jupiter and Mars. So now there's an asteroid belt. But at one time, there was a planet called Marduk, if that's the right pronunciation, reading it from the book. And it had humans on it too. It had stronger gravity, so the humans on that one were a little bit bigger, stronger, and it was closer, if I'm not correct, closer to the sun than the other one. So they were, I can't remember, I'd have to go back in the book. Anyways, essentially, they sent the comet in, and Jupiter threw the trajectory off of the comet, and it kind of just the sheer force of it passing by destroyed Marduk, created an asteroid field. It kind of went past Mars and stripped the atmosphere off Mars. So at one point, it had an atmosphere, and it was kind of like a big hole opened up, and it eventually kind of just dissipated. And that's why there's still polar caps on it, because at one point there was just full life on it. There was humans on it, but they all had to go underground because the atmosphere was just gone. And then as it came towards Earth, when Earth was a real water world, because before it was like water world in the sense of water world, like even history books talk about how first it was volcanoes, then the rain came from, because the volcanoes put out the minerals and stuff into the atmosphere, and then it comes down and creates rains for thousands of years, millions of years, oceans all over the planet. It's a water world. The atmosphere of the planet was also pretty solid water almost. It was like a sky ocean. Now, I can't really vouch for that or say that really was, but that's what's written in the book. And he talks about how, like, well, he gets his info from, he was a part of the Montauk Project, and just to go into that detail, extraterrestrials broke it down to him, essentially, on how it happened. But essentially, Earth's liquid atmosphere gets kind of put down to the atmosphere that we have there now. And before, the CO2 content was also different, so it was like a different atmosphere. There was already intelligent... See, dolphins are my favorite animal. Like, hands down, they are a mammal. They're not a fish. They're my favorite animal. At one point, there was an intelligent aquatic, like, being like a dolphin that was like, could use technology in a sense. Like, dolphins, they're like this close to using technology.
A dolphin?
Yes. No, that's good. I like that. But yeah, even dolphins say they're this close to being able
I mean, you can see how amazing they work with their sonar and their echolocation and shit like that. That's amazing. So just imagine just being able to control a dial or something.
Yeah, their ancestors, essentially. What they're descendant from, and they had to flee the planet to another planet. I can't remember what it said in the book. I feel like a maniac talking, like, but yeah, essentially this comet stopped between Mercury and Earth and got close enough to the sun where the ice on it melted into an atmosphere, which became Venus. So now Venus, apparently, if I'm going to believe what I've read, is that Venus was used as a weapon at one point, and actually there's bases on it because it was a ship too. It would have just went straight through the planets. It would have just, if it was on the target, if Jupiter's being as big as it was wouldn't have just pulled it slightly, it would have just went right through all of them. Just destroyed all of them. Like, and that's what Nibiru is. It's a reptilian spaceship. It's apparently, if I'm also going to believe Stuart Swerdlow, which the video is not up anymore, it's been removed from Facebook. It's been removed from YouTube. Censoring. But essentially, in 2003, he was talking about the Shoemaker-Levy comet that broke up and fell into Jupiter. It was actually It was actually Planet X, Nibiru,
Yeah.
being destroyed because those reptilians were having a disagreement with the reptilian caste that's actually in control of like the Bush family, let's say. Like there's a whole, they're all part of like this whole
lineage and shit.
lineage thing. I'm not saying like he's a reptilian himself, but there's this whole caste system that kind of leads finally to the very, very top reptilians. Only at the very top. And many people think that like shapeshifters everywhere, and there probably are. There's no doubt. You can't tell unless you see it happen yourself. I have never, ever in my life seen a UFO or extraterrestrial, but I believe it. Like, I just believe it. I don't know. It kind of, as it's being told to me, it feels like, wow, that's the truth.
Yeah, because there's so much mystery in the world that, like, why isn't it not a skeptical idea not to believe it? I mean, it's there. You don't know.
Well, they say that the moon, for instance, was a meteor that crashed into the Earth and it pulled parts of the Earth off, and that's what the science books say, that now it's in Earth's orbit, and that's why Earth is not a perfect sphere. And I believe as plants are created, they are made as perfect spheres. It's just centrifugal force when you get a drop out of water, and it makes a perfect sphere. That's why I can't believe the flat Earth, because you can't make a water droplet flat.
Yeah.
I don't want to whisper. I keep whispering on this, like,
You hear that, guys.
but you can't make a water droplet flat unless you force it flat yourself.
Yeah.
It'll never go flat itself. When you flick it, it'll always make a sphere, because that's the basis of even going down to atoms. When they've tried to look at them at a microscope, it's spheres. So at one point, the crust of the planet, and there's also an inner Earth at the poles. So it's like, I'm not even going to go into the logistics of that, but it was a crust. And as the reptilians need a surveillance device, they bring the moon in. And as the moon gets closer to the planet's surface, it creates plate tectonics in this process. So at one point, Earth is solid. Has no cracks in it at all. The holes in the North Pole and the South Pole are completely, from the comet, apparently that's how we got our solid ice caps, is because the ice from the comet and the water from the atmosphere polarized like a magnet to the ice caps. So that's why you can't, so when you fly over Antarctic, you can't see a big hole in the ground.
Yeah.
Because it got covered. But I guess Admiral Byrd flew into the North Pole, like, I forgot, in like the 20s or like the 30s, I forgot. And he was like talking about how like he flew into a whole nother world. Anyways, essentially this moon, it's like Atlantis was already a civilization, but you think that when you meet an alien that it's going to be peaceful. You think that things are going to be like, this guy knows more than you, and they do. Like you were saying earlier, they would scan Nixon for the launch codes. They don't even have to do that. They can just shut off the nukes. They can just hover over it, and they've done it. It's just reported. They could just fly over it. Can't use your nuke anymore. Sorry. I took your power away. They can just do that. They don't even... So, like, they have also abused their power, almost like police officers. I like to say as above, so below. So as it's going like there, it's going like here, too, at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's like it's happening almost on all levels. And so essentially there's so much infighting on Atlantis and Lemuria, and so the reptilians, I keep skipping, but
it's such a complicated
the dinosaurs
intense story.
I should say that's where I really should have started. They brought dinosaurs after the comet stripped the atmosphere. There were no humans on Earth. They're all on Mars and Marduk. They went and landed on Earth, and they brought with them cattle, which was dinosaurs, and they're pets, just like we have cats, just like we have dogs. Theirs were like raptors and stuff. They like had just that. Like, have you ever played Turok?
Yeah,
I feel like that. Like, it's so dumb. It's like, well, you just seen it in a game. Well, when I watched the game, it did something to me. Also, not like when I was a kid. I looked at it differently later on after I learned the reptilian stuff, and then I looked at it and I was like. And I looked up the game developers, and I'm like, they probably maybe somebody down the line, maybe somebody's info said make a game out of this.
Yeah.
But they brought their own beings. They brought their own, and that's what the dinosaurs were. And to get rid of, because the dinosaurs were eating the Atlanteans, to get rid of it, they created their own cataclysms, which not only sunk Atlantis, but during there's 3 events. I'm not going to get into. It's in Stuart Swerdlow's book, Blue Blood, True Blood. I will keep plugging that book because it's a very good book. Blue Blood, True Blood, Conflict and Creation. Essentially, the reptilians are their one food source, which was dinosaurs, which that's their cattle, that's their food, was being destroyed because the humans, or like the type of beings that were there, were just getting rid of all of them. They're destroying them with sound wave technology. They were just, it was because they were also running rampant. The reptilians weren't controlling everything, blah blah blah. So I think that's kind of, maybe that's where the hatred started for the Earth, anyways. Because then once that happens, once Atlantis and Lemuria finally sink, and there's no more civilizations on the planet, and the reptilians actually kind of finally won, essentially, because they got their planetoid around the Earth watching, and now they get to wait for things to rebuild and start doing things again. They get to put the puzzles together their way. And so that's why you get civilizations like Sumeria meeting fish-like gods coming down from a sky out of a ship, because they were reptilians. And they were like, now our turn, we're having our revenge. Or because I guess at one point Lemuria was a peaceful reptilian land. Imagine going to a land where it was very kind. There were actually a lot of intelligent shaman. Like, have you ever played Skyrim, actually?
Yeah, I've played some Skyrim.
So you know, like the lizard race, the Argonians.
Okay.
It's like going to Argonia. And like, imagine they're just super peaceful, but their food source is getting out of control, blah, blah, blah. So just the whole cataclysm caused shit to happen and be at the state that we see it now today. And the people that were picking up the pieces were reptilians, who now their only food source is, there's a whole nother thing, but they've combined their genetics with the surviving human genetics, because there's the whole Adam and Eve thing, and they had their hand in that when that first started, before they're building the pieces. It's all in the book. I keep skipping, but essentially they like take over and they start doing it their way, and so it leads all the way up into now. And like the Illuminati, for instance, their top eye, the Pindar, is probably a reptilian. And I say the Pindar, if it was 20 years ago, I wouldn't be able to say Pindar on the radio. But now I say it all I want, because Pindar will fall. It's the very top of the pyramid, very, very tippity top, and there's nothing. If you look up Pindar on Google, you'll find Pindar Vineyards, which is a winery in Italy, and very, very tippy top. And so as they control humanity and as they make it, things do get out of control. So as our freedoms, as our natural order starts showing to the world that sometimes things can go right, and we start advancing our own technology and start developing things, probably in the Renaissance era, where humans were thinking and they were being smart and they didn't need alien technology. We didn't even think of even wanting to use a laptop or a computer or make things convenient for ourselves. We wanted art. You know, Leonardo da Vinci was creating some crazy things, but still, you know, it was a different time where we were looking at different technologies. So it's like, you also have, I gotta lose myself here, but they always want control. So I'll lose myself. I like talk myself with blankness.
It's okay. So one thing that I'm getting out of this too that kind of freaks me out is you were talking about the book. What was the book again?
Stuart Swerdlow, Blue Blood, True Blood,
okay.
Conflict and Creation.
So talking about like the way creation and stuff started, not recently, when I was younger, I got into David Icke, and I actually saw like a 3-hour video of him talking to the shaman.
Credo Mutua.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that whole conversation of how that aspect of the world started and stuff is a little different, right? I mean,
well, kind of.
Because the way he talks about it is like they were all kind of like one being. Like the human race was kind of like one being.
Well, you can also think of it like that too. It's in a sense of one consciousness. It's always been one consciousness for sure. Like, and that's what David Icke and Stuart Swerdlow both teach above anything else. They don't teach about the horrors that's going on in the world. Well, David Icke tries to inform people, but his real teachings about vibration and you think you're human, but you're really not human. We're energy. So we're all one thing. We're all just atoms and protons and neutrons and electrons. So we're getting down to it nitty gritty. Essentially, I'm one with the mic. The mic, it's part of me. We're all down to the very atoms. Because I was looking up the other day randomly, trying to look up atoms under electron microscope. That's so I was like, oh, spheres, perfect. I love spheres. But yeah, like we're all one thing in general. And Credo Mutwa's story, he actually has this neck. It's a necklace, and it's this big copper heavy necklace, and he talks about there's a penis on it and stuff, and they're talking about how like
the story of all the thing that happened.
I didn't see that's the touchy part, because I'm not black, and this is a Zulu shaman, right? And he's talking about how black people were created as a slave race from reptilians, and the reptilians were using them just as they were using other races too. And like essentially Marduk being close enough to the sun, it was just a planet of stronger people who actually had darker complexion. And so some of the survivors from there were also brought in these experiments that combined human, Syrian, and reptilian DNA. So the Syrians, like I said, they had their hands and everything. I bring that back. And Stuart sort of talks about that. He also, at the end of his book, has a list of all the extraterrestrials that he knows of and what he's encountered and dealt with in his healings at Montauk and his life dealing with the government and all that stuff. Actually, his first encounter was he was met by a clear being, something that was standing in front of him that you could see through to his very translucent. It's like a fish. Have you seen those like little translucent fish?
Yeah, that kind of.
It kind of looked like a whole being like that, but a human form. And apparently they've been watching him from birth. He has a special DNA. Let's just say that. I guess he talks about it better if you look him up. But essentially,
I want this DNA.
Everyone has it. Okay, what the basis of it is? These extraterrestrials came from another dimension and brought reptilians into this galaxy because the original humans, the original form of humans. Yes, they were blonde hair and blue eyed, apparently. I can't really go into details because I wasn't there. Let's just say that. But apparently the Lyrians settled in the Lyrian star system. And from being non-physical, they were non-physical. They didn't have a form. They entered the galaxy and chose to have form. So they downgraded. They fell from grace. It talks about angels falling in the Bible. They're like infinite beings that cast down their infiniteness to like, let's try this. So I see a lot of people are always like, oh, I want to advance. I want to go to the infinite. And it's like, well, we already tried that. And now we're not necessarily, I don't look at it as a downgrade. It's a new thing that they're trying. And to test this race that come into this galaxy, this clear race that's multidimensional, that goes and sees all whatever, they wanted to test them. So they brought another reptilian race and they brought them to this galaxy. And since that moment, there's been trials and tribulations throughout the galaxy of this conflict between reptilians and humans. Different humans throughout the galaxy as they spread and created refugees throughout the galaxy. So that's why we have an Earth. It specifically actually is kind of special in the sense that it's one of the planets that are on the outside edge that lead to the outside of the galaxy. So we're not a core planet. We're like Naboo or something, like Tatooine or something. I don't know, it's Star Wars, but we're on the outer rim. And so a lot of emphasis is put on this planet. A lot of DNAs and a lot of extraterrestrials are all coming through this, like we're a port, you could say. To enter this galaxy, you got to pass through this planet, or you got to pass through the solar system. And so a lot of things happen on Earth where there's a lot of mixture of DNA, and essentially Stuart Swirler talks about the Ohula Council. I have to go back and look at the page to say the name right, but anyways, it was a council that to stop the fighting, like I guess, like I explained earlier, there's a bunch of conflict. One of the things that were done, because there's many things, to stop the fighting, they decided to combine the genetics. And so they combined the races that all had their hand in the conflict, just decided to stop fighting for a bit and make a new being. And this being came the humans that we are today. So we're actually a hodgepodge of different, and that's what's in our DNA when we look at what's our junk DNA. It's the little bits of extra DNA that's extraterrestrial, that's reptilian, that's Syrian, that's, I say Syrian wrong, but it's like Sirius B and Sirius A from that star. So like we're actually and obviously that didn't work. It didn't stop the conflict because, like I said, it all kind of ended and till there was no civilizations left. And there's other calamities that happened since then to stop civilizations, like the flood. In the Bible, I'm not totally into everything that happens in the Bible, but I know that like a lot of the Old Testament kind of is written how it happened, and the translations have been lost through time because it's been translated through Greek, it's been translated through Hebrew, and different kings have had their hand on the book, and different wanted to make different things happen, and blah blah blah. So
it has so many versions of it.
But just to mention calamities that happen and restarts that is, so we're looking at the Sumerian culture, and they're the first restart, and like a lot of the, so I don't want to scare nobody about demons and stuff, but Pazuzu, who was the demon in the movie Exorcist, he's a reptilian entity who was one of the few people who came down to during the Babylonian period, and that's why they have sculptures of him. That's why in the movie he's holding this little thing and he's excavating. That's the beginning of the movie. They're excavating in fucking wherever they're at. I forget where they're at. They're somewhere in the Middle East, and they're just excavating. He finds this little figure because they came down. These humans carved what they saw. They didn't just come up with it, and maybe some cultures did. But at the same time, I feel like no. If you've just seen trees and rocks your whole life, and you see a lizard talking to you, and you make a statue of it, that's something
significant.
Yeah, it's significant. So like, they had their hand in it from the beginning, leading to the end, and I think that they've just lost control many times, and that's kind of like what's leading on to this whole event with COVID, is that they want control again, they want to restart again. They don't have all the tools necessary, and I think in 2001, when the two towers fell, they were supposed to start things. They were supposed to do things, but there's also kind of resistances behind the scenes that they are also fighting opposing forces, and they're also fighting each other, and so it's this whole mess that they can't get all their goals taken care of. And so time keeps going, and then it goes to 2012 and nothing happens, and the time keeps going to 2020, so almost a whole decade later, and they're just trying to force it. But I could see things almost settling down. Not really. I don't want to jinx it. But I feel like how you're saying earlier, like this might be the year that we get to see extraterrestrials. One thing that Stuart Swirla was talking about, and the time has already passed that he predicted, but in his early podcasts that he would do, because I used to watch his news podcasts like all the time when I was going to college in 2011 and stuff like that. And he would talk about how in 2015 to 2017, expect a staged alien invasion. Expect an orchestrated event using real extraterrestrials. Expect this. Those dates have come and passed. Now it's 2020. And I actually not kept in contact with him, just Facebook Messenger, and talked things. Still saying, I still believe you. I still watch his videos and his news reports, and him and his wife, Janet, and they do these really great podcasts. It's like really wholesome, and makes you feel like they're humans too, but they've experienced things, especially Stuart, that's like, I can't, but that's what makes it's hard to think of. And then he's living a normal life. Maybe it could all be a ruse, but I actually doubt it, because I've seen some of his other seminars where he's talking about vibrations, and he's talking about shapes, and he's talking about colors, and he's talking about that's what everything is. That's what we are. We're an archetype, shape, tone. One time, where's my wallet? One time I drew this thing after I started learning all this stuff, and I couldn't make sense of it, but I knew kind of what I was drawing because I had the book with me, and I was going through it, and I was looking at symbols. And this is his book of, it's called the Hyperspace Journal. And the video I was watching it's like hyperspace learning. And where are we? I made this little diagram of like just a bunch of symbols that I seen. And maybe they don't really mean too much, But it's just a bunch of symbols that, like, I just keep with me now. It's in my wallet all the time.
Interesting.
And, like, they all have their significance, and I wrote them all in the book back then, definitely, what they all meant and how they all related to me and how I kept it all. It's all meant to be contained within the tetrahedron, which is this, like, violet-colored secureness. So going back to demons and how, like, people worry about people out of the body are being possessed. This is one way to protect yourself, is a violet tetrahedron diamond. So it has 4 corners, but it has 2 points at the top. And you can just picture this. And you can picture yourself also inside of... It'd be 2 triangles upside down. It says you can picture yourself in that, picture yourself in that. Essentially, if you're... like, I feel like... but you're talking about imagination and really using it as an archetype for, like, an image, for, like, using archetypal visualizations. So, like, going through here, the simplest one is a circle with a dot. Now, hobos use that, I forget, for another symbol that they have, but essentially a circle in the dot is like
knowledge, right?
Well, Stuart Swerdlow had an explanation in the book, and I feel very bad for not remembering it, because it was like almost over a decade ago that I drew these pictures. So it was like, it's like perfection, because it's like a dot within a center, and then
because all I think about when I see that is just Dr. Manhattan.
Yes, and he's a perfect being. Yeah. He is, like, so
does like literally knows. Oh, it's amazing.
And like I've read the book, and just to get everything a little lighthearted, the book and that movie is like my favorite comic book movie adaptation that accurately got as close as they could to the comic book, because they're smoking like meth in the comic book. I mean, let's get it real. They're like popping open their little bubbles and stuff, and it's like nonchalant, but everyone's on this drug. At the end, there's just a giant octopus thing that attacks the city instead of like Nuke. But overall, that movie was really, really good as a comic book adaptation copy. And I think Alan Moore knew some crazy shit. I can't vouch for that, but like Alan Moore, the writer of The Watchmen, what's that, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
Oh yeah.
V for Vendetta, which is very relevant to our time at this moment. Where, like, imagine if people in their rights just all like, where's Anonymous actually? We are Anonymous. They've actually been doing some crazy stuff behind the scenes. I'd have to go look it up, because I didn't have notes. If I had some notes, maybe I'd be on point and remember everything. But yeah, essentially they're behind the scenes too. They're trying to get things exposed, and they've been doing things
for a while now.
Well, the biggest thing they did was that whole thing with like China and Sony, and maybe that has something to do with COVID-19 and stuff. And I get back to the World Health Organization. Let's go back to something that actually is super factual, is that China is such a country that is... It's the CCP. So it's a communist country. Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party. And then there's this one YouTuber, you can look it up, it's called the China Uncensored, and he talk. I love that channel, love that dude. He's just on point with things right now, and the way he talks about it is so like unbiased. He's just reporting the news. It's great. But the WHO were in bed with them. There's this interview where this Chinese lady is trying to ask them about Taiwan. In Taiwan, I don't know all the logistics, but I guess China owns Taiwan as a country. Taiwan is not allowed to be Taiwan. They're China.
But they still have the way that they were established, they still kind of go with the other ruling, right? Mm-hmm. Of like what Britain and stuff used to be.
Yeah, so essentially they'd go by what Hong Kong was. Yeah. And Hong Kong recently just got taken over by the communist stuff. As far as I know, I think they're working hard to get Hong Kong now, because Hong Kong for some reason was still free, because I think Disneyland and people being able to visit and populations and stuff, but the rest of the country is communist. It's a lockdown. That's why it's, when you look at how they handled their lockdown, Like, people who were suspected of being sick were shoved in the back of trucks and hauled off to the
right.
hospital. Like,
Their doors were boarded and just like stuck there.
Yeah, it was serious. They handled it by taking full, like, I do bring it back to the muzzles, but like, we handled it like, oh, we're taking all our freedoms. They took their freedoms. They're like, one day you had what was given to you freedoms, and now your government just took it all away. You get, in fact, your government now has an app on your phone, and if you talk about coronavirus, we'll spot you as somebody who may or may not be infected with the virus, and we're going to go to your house now.
Yeah,
and we're gonna check it
threat,
out.
some kind of threat.
So it is that serious. And the CCP, or I should say, no, the who are you? The WHO, they knew November, December, January that there was something that could come out, and they didn't say anything. They didn't do anything. They're it's all part of the scheme, the Illuminati. It's all part of the whole thing. It's all part, and China's just, well, if I'm going to go deep into it, even with dragons, if you're going to go to the history of how China was made, one of their ancient kings was a dragon, reptilian. So it's like their dynasty, which is one of the last countries on the planet that actually has their own gold reserve full, like we do, but we may not have gold reserves like we say we do in Fort Knox. They're like the last country that owns like all the gold, and they're part of the Illuminati, or I just keep saying that name, but it's bigger than that. That's a silly name now. They've made it such a joke.
Yeah, everybody says it.
It's like yeah.
It's just a thing. Everybody does it. Like, it's not even, again, like, they introduced it in a way so that when they do start making moves and stuff, it's not as, we're just like, oh, well, we knew the Illuminati were there the whole time.
Yeah, they came out with the card game. But one of the cards is pandemic and population control. I was like looking it up right as the broke out. I was like, I always look things up. I always look up the cards whenever I hear something crazy going on. And like, these came out in the 90s, and like all throughout the 2000s, every one of these cards is happening. And it's like the Illuminati card game, whatever. But you see, just one of them is population control. One of them is pandemic. And like I was saying, it's all a test, I feel. It's all something to get you ready for, and maybe it may not happen yet. Maybe we still got another decade. Maybe they still got, maybe they don't. We don't know.
Yeah, because how is this happening with all the advancements in technology that are about to happen? Like, you've heard Elon Musk talk about, like, Neuralinks and stuff. Is that going to be what really connects us with aliens, or is that our way of showing aliens that we're smart enough to interact with them? Or so many different aspects of why that's even being invented. Like, obviously he has this whole story of how it's made for, helping people just with brain function, and then he adds in the extra, like, knowledge base and being able to, like, compute so fast. Like, where is that?
Well, like, going back to, and I've seen you talk about it in other videos, where like, oh, well, you'd just be able to, like, text you something into your mind. You wouldn't have to, like, have a device anymore. Yeah. That's kind of like where they're trying to go. But at the same time, I don't think the human nature, or the basic instinct will kind of allow a fool. Maybe eventually, but I'd rather look at it like Star Trek, where, like, humans don't have currency anymore. They're all trading, and everyone's happy on Earth, and conflicts are beyond Earth now. But, essentially, all of our minds are already connected through infinite consciousness. We're all compartmentalized into subpersonalities. So we're all already connected. That's how some people are able to connect more, because maybe, and I don't exactly know how astrology works, but sometimes those energies, when they connect just right, you can almost see the line of energy connecting those two people together, that group of people or whatever they're joining together, and you can see the consciousness coming together. It's just one whole thing, and it separated itself. Like, I'll get into drugs, I guess, a little bit. I have done acid. I've done one little bit of DMT, but it wasn't really like a real hit of DMT. Yeah. But and I've done a bunch of shrooms. I've never done combo drugs, but I have
What's the most amount of shrooms that you've done?
At one time, maybe like 7 or 8 grams, maybe.
What?
Like I guess I say that all nonchalant, but there was one day where like I ate
Dope.
3 grams, and then like it really depends on how strong they are. Maybe like they just weren't strong enough, and I just kept eating more. But there was a couple nights where like I was like, oh wow, okay.
Just on another level.
Well, it's more with shrooms. It's more of a body high. With acid, I feel like I can take myself to those places, but I have to work really hard to focus and not freak myself out. Because people will freak yourself out.
Yeah.
But you have to just really want. And I only have done it since I've known the Stuart Swerdlow and David Icke. Like David Icke's whole thing where he's like, "You think you're human," and like I watched that before that video. I'll definitely have to show you that. It's just like a really short thing. But when he talks about how like the energy, and when you watch the movie The Matrix, right, and the way the Matrix work. Imagine not like the same scenario at all. Just forget about the same scenario. But imagine that your body is like these computers. They're physical. They have hardware. They have components. But without the plug in the wall, without the energy source, they're kind of off. Some of them have charge. And let's think about the ones with internal batteries, because that's what we have. We have a heart that pumps. We have a brain. It's all internal. It keeps us alive. So let's think about a fully charged battery. We eat to stay alive. We fuel ourselves. But where does our consciousness come from? Now, when you're playing a video game or a computer, let's say stay on the computer topic. When you go up to, well, maybe we could use video games and computers. But when you go up to the hardware and you just picture your physical body as the consciousness. And you're just going to go up to that computer. You're going to go up to the hardware. And now you're going to start using it to do stuff. And you're going to accomplish things in that world that you're doing stuff in. So picture the cyber world as the physical world that we're in, sitting in this room. Our physical bodies, our computer, our consciousness is the player, the gamer, the artist, whatever. There's a control. Now that artist is also connected to an oversoul, and picture the oversoul as this tube that connects to a giant mass that's just a giant cloud of consciousness, and everybody is connected but separated. More people have disconnected themselves than others. Some people are more connected than others. Some people are almost completely disconnected to the point where they can't even feel until the moment that they die and their soul goes back to infinite consciousness. Until the moment that their thoughts go back to the massive thoughts. When I was on acid one time, I did really hard to do affirmations. So I focused hard on like not necessarily those images, but a spiral staircase affirmation, which is there's 2 staircase affirmations, and they're kind of time travels. You think of time travel as physically time traveling, but you can mentally time travel. Where you're just sending your thoughts through your DNA, going back. And I did a spiral staircase, which is beyond your own DNA. So straight staircase is the life that you've lived since you've been born. Spiral staircase will go beyond your life. So like, tried my hardest to keep going. And like there's the life I felt like I lived right before this one. I was a soldier somewhere, and I died in the grass, because where I just see the last image and the only image I can make up is just like blood on the grass before I start remembering my memories as a child. So just remember coughing up blood maybe, or like there was just blood on the grass. That's just what I saw. But regressing as far back as I could, just really trying to zoom out as much as I could, I saw like a vast pool, right? And this is just maybe my mind putting it together for myself, because there's no way to really interpret it. It's impossible. What we see is not really what we see, because it's all light reflecting off everything anyways. But what I saw was a giant violet pool, right? And in this pool are these pure white eggs. Just little eggs floating in the pool. The sky is kind of separated by like almost like the ocean is violet, and then it kind of goes to almost a white, and then it goes to violet again, as if the ceiling is violet too, like the sky. Okay. And there's these floating eggs. And I went up to an egg as if like maybe my body is floating and I can actually open up an egg. And when I open it up, I see like galaxies. I see like little galaxies in this egg, and I look at another egg, and I see galaxies, and then I feel like I'm coming from an egg, and like, so that's how I pictured it, like as if. And then when I really started thinking about it, what is this area that I'm in? What are these eggs? Why am I seeing it as eggs? There's the whole thing about birth and creation with eggs too, so maybe that's what my brain was interpreting and trying to put together.
Get something out of it.
But like, I kind of sense that this whole thing is also inside of something that's just one thing. And as it thinks, it creates within itself. So as it thinks, it creates pocket universes, different realities. And as it keeps thinking more, it creates life within itself. And more just life kind of happens. Like, scientists are kind of I'm totally not the whole God created thing in 7 days. I believe in God. When someone asks you, do you believe in God? I say, yes, but I believe in God mind, infinite consciousness, something that is like not, can't just go to heaven, and I shouldn't, because I've been to many funerals and I've been like very honorable to people's religions. I myself have been born and raised Jewish and Christian, so it's like I know how people deal with religion, and I've been, in those situations.
Yeah, you've dealt with it yourself.
So it's like, in that sense, I can see that. Well, okay, here's one thing that definitely works. It's the only part of religion that I say will work. It's having a higher power. And when I went to Alcoholics Anonymous, which I was really only there for NA, because I would repeatedly get caught at school for weed and stuff, and I had to go to teen court. One of the teen court things was you had to do AA.
Dun, dun, dun.
And so I met these people that are way terrible situations than me. And their savior, to save themselves from killing themselves, because they can't stop drinking, they're addicted. They're truly, utterly addicted. These people are in bad situations. There's one guy who said he tried to shoot himself, didn't succeed, but now he has a hole in his head. But every day he rubs his 1 day coin, because it's a coin you get for being sober for 1 day, and it makes him feel better. And then he's been sober for like 10 years, something like. I haven't seen him in like 10 years, so maybe. Hope he's still alive. I hope he's doing good. I ended up getting my 1 year coin. I will admit there may have been times in there where I wasn't completely sober, but it was just pot. Come on, it's pot. Yeah, I have a medical card now. Come on.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's just like, oh, is it really that bad?
But I did participate with this group, and I saw them have this higher power. And that's one of the steps, is to give yourself to the higher power. And
it's acceptance to something that is bigger than you.
And I think a part of it that they don't realize, or maybe they just don't notice, is that once you realize that, now you can become a part of the higher power. And now you've realized this potential that you have for this whole greatness that you haven't been having before. Now you are part of the greatness. And now you could just keep moving forward from their life. And they probably just go like, well, now I believe in God. And now I believe in Jesus. And this is my life. But really what's just happened is that their higher power answered their prayers, in the sense that infinite consciousness allowed them to connect. To connect back with your oversoul, with your God mind, infinite consciousness.
It's crazy to think about too, because even just the aspect of what we're made of and how we're made and stuff is just mind blowing. Like, there's that thing where there's more stars in the sky than grains of salt in the earth, but yet there's more atoms inside of our body than there are anything else in this world. Yep. So those are just like those little things where I like the aspect where you say, like, we're like kind of all one. Like, no matter what you think about, if you took anything out from its core principle of an atom, an electron, and a neutron, what's not, again, I love how you say it was, I'm one with the mic, or I'm one with the mouse, or anything like that. And how do you not see that when somebody plays an instrument like the best of their abilities, when they've been practicing it for years and years on end? It's like they know, because it's more of an adaptation of their body. It is them, and it is anything that they've wanted to do. And that's where I find beautiful about the human race, or about us, where we can always learn. and become efficient in anything we want to do. And no matter what, like everything is all like, it's so sick.
And I don't want people to think that, oh, I need to throw down all my material items. I need to just get rid of every little bit of material. I'm too materialistic. I am in favor of, like, because I've seen people's houses burn down. I see them lose everything and everything they owned. And how do you deal with that when all your materialistic stuff you've built, it just disappears? Actually, I had my phone stolen. That's what happened to me in March. And I was so devastated. I was hurt, actually. It felt like a part of me was ripped out. Because, like, for 5 years, I had this phone that I put 1 million pictures in that I saved. That just had all this history, actually, things that were happening in the world that just were categorized in this phone. And everything in this phone, right?
It's just gone.
And how do I react to that? And is it okay to have materialistic items? And is it okay to surround yourself? I think that there should be moderation. I think people shouldn't surround them. I think they should take in consideration those 5 sins, or the 7 deadly sins, and gluttony in particular, and like coveting items and stuff particular. But
the best thing ever, if I've always been able to give advice, is just to have balance.
Yes, exactly.
In everything. There's no, I don't care what it is or how it's done. There's always going to be the negative and positive of life, and just balance it out.
Yeah, and like I'm saying, like here, you can reach that enlightenment without having to drop all your material stuff, but it still takes dedication of your mind.
And buying a book.
Yeah, and buying a book. But besides buying a book, buying a book.
But that's only because back then, because I kind of, I'm guilty of it too. Like, I bought some books from David Icke and from Alex Jones. I was a big Alex Jones fan back in the day too. But there was no real way of getting that information. Yeah. And now
it was suppressed a lot.
Now, literally, you can Google search or any search and find it readily available, fingertips like that. Like, you can find the whole Credo Mutua video. Not only that, you can find the transcript for it. There's so much knowledge out there now.
That Phil Schneider video probably wasn't being able to be seen by public eye until the 2000s. Yeah. Like all the rest of the 90s, you probably wouldn't have had access to that unless you were in that room. And then internet came and people were able to re-upload. I watched that video be re-uploaded all the time, and I comment on it. It's like, I keep hoping somebody keeps re-uploading this video because it is so important. But and that's the video of Phil Schneider dumbs deep underground military bases. But essentially, yeah, like the information being able to be released, and Stuart Swerdlow talking about how, like, they want you to know now, and us going over desensitization. But like I was saying before, you mentioned buying a book, and I feel like back in the day when we were talking about, oh, Jesus was enlightened, and let's actually not just talk about Jesus, but Buddha, Siddhartha, he was enlightened. How did he achieve enlightenment? This was a man who gluttony to the most. He was a prince, and he had access to women, he had access to food, he was a fat man, and that's why he's the fat Buddha. Eventually, he found religion, and that religion, which is totally different. Tibetism, or Hinduism, that's what it's called. I don't want to get anything wrong because I will make myself look dumb, and I don't want the comic section to blow up. Like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But
you have a lot more insight than a lot of my other guests, so don't worry about that.
Okay. Siddhartha sat under a tree. If we're going to go with what he said, for 40 days and 40 nights, that was his enlightenment. Now, I'm not encouraging anyone to do that. Do not do that. He was a fat man. Not saying any fat men should go and sit in a tree and lose weight, because that's not going to work either. But the story goes that he sat there and he contemplated life, and he just sat there and he got rid of all this material stuff. And then finally, he reached that enlightenment. Now, the Buddhists say, or Hindus say, that he keeps getting reincarnated. But I think Buddha, Siddhartha, was the only one who was able to not reincarnate. There's a way to not reincarnate and just become a part of infinite consciousness and not have that same imprint soul go into another physical DNA body. There's a way. And he found that way. Not saying that that's for everybody. Like, I'm not someone who feels like infinite consciousness is like the world that I need to be in. Like, I don't need to be in a pool of just the same stuff looking everywhere. I like having that compartmentalization, because I think it's another step in evolution, in being able to change and grow. And maybe it comes in a loop. Maybe if you've seen Star Trek and you know the Q, and Q tells Picard that one day you'll be like us, and that's what I'm afraid of, and that's why I'm testing you. Because one day you'll be like us. Maybe 1,000, maybe 1,000,000 years.
Yeah, and you have to be able to be responsible.
So I think that we can be gamers. We can be people who party to an extent. You shouldn't I think a lot of people shouldn't. Well, I don't want to go into that too much, but like, we should be able to have our freedoms, but moderate ourselves in a way that we can still focus on reaching our infinite goals.
Enlightenment.
Yes. And still being able to have your things and enjoy your friends, enjoy your games, enjoy your computers, and enjoy talking to people. And we can still have that. And I think because I met a lot of hippies that are just like, you got to get rid of everything and just go out in the mountains. That's the only way to live. But it's not. You can achieve that just where you're at as long as you're focusing.
Yeah.
You know?
It's actually really good sense right there. You guys hear that? Hell yeah. Dude, we just did 2 hours.
Ooh.
I sound like Joe Rogan every time. It's like, yeah, guys, we just did 2 hours. That was awesome.
I like Joe Rogan. That's why I came here, is because I want to talk on a mic. And I've watched podcasts. When I was driving up, I was listening to Jim Cornette's podcast, which is a wrestling podcast. And I watched them all. I like talking. I wanted to talk about stuff.
Crazy too. We could actually, if you're down to come back, we could actually talk a lot about wrestling. Too.
Oh, okay.
Because I was into wrestling really heavy, but only during the Attitude and then SmackDown and Raw era, and then the whole Invasion era thing.
Okay,
and
so we're gonna spend another 2 hours.
Yeah, because after that, dude, wrestling just kind of became more of dramatization of. I don't know. Did you see this WrestleMania? This last WrestleMania?
Oh yeah, I watched it. So I guess I'll start with this so that we don't have a too big of a history. But essentially, I have stopped watching wrestling since 2007. Actually, I stopped watching it because it went very PG, and the whole Chris Benoit thing, and Eddie Guerrero was one of my favorites, and so he died. All that stuff happened, and then I started doing other stuff. I also didn't have cable.
Okay.
Last year, I met Glenn Jacobs Kane at Comic-Con.
Oh.
So when I shook his hand, all I could ask him was, "What's your favorite slam?" And he said, "Choke slam." And it's I feel like I could have asked him a million other questions, but I did. I was just too starstruck. I shook his hand. I caught the wrestling bug. May I saw a wrestling show in Rio Rancho. It was great. I loved Braun Strowman. That shit was dope. There's some people on the roster I really got to like. And I watched it through the end. I love The Fiend. I love Bray Wyatt. I'd never seen him before. He came back, Bray Wyatt. Coming this year, I was so hyped for actually some stuff that were coming out, because I was also watching AEW, and I like that too. Then COVID hit, bro. And coming all the way back to where we kind of almost began, because we talked about Comic-Con and COVID. It just shut shit down. But Vince McMahon, and you know what? The one thing he did give up on was the XFL. And I was totally into the XFL. I was watching it because I love WWE, but he will not give up on WWE. And some of the wrestlers didn't want to give up on WWE, but one man defied them all, and that was Roman Reigns, because he has leukemia. And he didn't want to put himself at risk of being sick, because The Miz apparently got sick at that same time, and they didn't know if he had COVID or not. And so, there was this whole mix of things. Will Roman Reigns face Goldberg at WrestleMania for the Universal title? Was it? Yeah, blue Universal title. So it's different, because last time Roman Reigns had the title, he had to give it up because he had leukemia, so he dropped the title in 2017. I didn't know this stuff before last year. I just been catching up, and I too much wrestling.
Yeah,
we're gonna go into
it's
it.
So crazy.
I keep up with the news for over about a year now. Over a year. So it's crazy. The empty arena shows. It boggles my mind. AEW does it better because they have a crowd in the ring, and that's the other wrestlers. They're just cheering and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, it's insane. It's insane.
That's crazy.
But yeah, when I come back,
we'll get some more.
We'll talk about wrestling.
Because I've been watching too the Dark Side of the Ring.
Oh, you've been watching those?
Yeah.
I loved it. I love. I've always been sad about Owen Hart, and I always wanted to play him in a game. But now I know there's a good reason why I don't play him in a game.
Yeah, or that he's not in the Hall of Fame.
That he's not in the Hall of Fame because his family don't want WWE to make money off a man that they kind of assisted in killing or not. It comes down to if you watch the episode, it comes down to someone gave him the wrong rigging equipment.
Yeah, it wasn't proper precautions.
Like a sailboat clicker thingy, anyways. But yeah, thank you for having me, man. It was great.
Awesome.
I had a great time.
So sick. We'll get you back on, dude. That's sick. I'm pretty sure you don't want these people to follow you, but if you did, where would they follow you?
You can follow me on YouTube, Mr. Monster. I love the subscribers. I don't have very many videos, but you could just check out. Maybe I might encourage me to post more, or, well, no, that's only. I guess you could follow me on Instagram. It's like Rockin' Pat. I'd have to go. What the fuck?
Rockin' Pat. Rockin' Pat, everybody.
I have my Instagram.
That probably doesn't sound right, but it sounds funny.
Yeah, hold on. I'll tell you. My Instagram is
Rockin' Pat.
Yes, Rockin' Pat 1991. You can follow me there. You can message me there.
Guys,
and then from there we can talk.
That's what's up. Thank you guys for joining. You guys are awesome. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll have some more stuff. Make sure to follow me everywhere, social media sites you can. MuseMe TV. And yeah, dude, thanks again for coming, man. I appreciate it.